I look forward to this every single week. It's a weekly pulse on all things green and gold with the three-time Wisconsin Sportswriter of the Year, Jason Wilde. We call it Weekly Wilde. I'm Alex Strouf hanging out with you on Bears Week, Rivalry Week. Despite Matt LaFleur's record against the Bears, Jason, it still seems like this Bears rivalry is alive and well. You had a lot of locker room availability yesterday, Wednesday. Xavier McKinney, his first year on the Packers, talking trash about DJ Moore. I'm curious from your perspective, as you talk to all these guys in the locker room. Hello, by the way. What do you make of this rivalry, despite Matt LaFleur and Elton Jenkins and other Packers never losing to the Bears? It seems like this rivalry is still alive and well.
Yeah, no, rivalries in the NFL are a fallacy. Their rivalries are for fans, for you and Jen Latta, or Matt Hamilton and Jim Rutledge, or Jesse Nelson and Corey Sparks. One of those people in each of those pairings are Bears fans. One of them is a Packers fan. And so now what made the Xavier McKinney thing yesterday so interesting is that, as you stated, first of all, he's new here. So he's never played in the Packers-Bears rivalry. And secondly, it's more personal than it is team related, right? Now, he did say, and let me tell you how this started. So, we have a little consortium of one-man bands that we try to make sure we cover for everybody. So Domovsky and I were at Jordan Love, and McKinney started talking before Love was finished. So obviously Domovsky and I aren't going to leave to go that. And so Bill Huber, being a good teammate, was over there with McKinney. And I thought Bill asked a great question. He basically said, look, you played at Alabama. Alabama, Auburn, now that's a rivalry. But these are kind of fake, right? And McKinney was like, no, I believe in NFL rivalries. Now, I think that does put him in the minority. I stand by what I said at the beginning of this conversation.
Yeah.
But for him, this is personal. And what I love about beef, it's what's for dinner and it's what's for on the menu for Sunday, is that it doesn't even have to be accurately depicted to be beef. So I went back and look. Let me back up here. So McKinney is talking to Hughes and a few other people, and unsolicited, unprompted, he brings up how DJ Moore disrespected him. And the way he tells it is that DJ Moore is on a podcast. It was Up and Adams with Kay Adams, formerly the NFL Network. And that when Kay Adams asks DJ Moore about the Packers getting Xavier McKinney, DJ Moore replies, "Who?" Which I get it. That's disrespectful. But then I watched the actual video of it, and Kay Adams is telling DJ Moore, who, look, I'm not here to defend DJ Moore, by the way. The guy left the field during a play when his rookie quarterback was running for his life against the Cardinals. And because he'd stepped out of bounds, he just decided, I'm going to go grab myself a Gatorade. So I'm not a character here. But that's not what he said. Kay Adams asks him, hey, the Lions drafted a couple of corners. The Packers signed Xavier McKinney. And before she's even finished saying Xavier McKinney's name, he says who, asking what team she's talking about. And then he says, that's nice, or, oh, good for them, or something clearly snarky. Now, don't get me wrong. So the mentality behind it is not inaccurate, but it's not like he was like, I don't know who the hell this Xavier McKinney guy is. But that's how Xavier McKinney took it. And he is taking this game personally. And the fact that he brought it up unprompted tells you that he wanted this out there and he wants a piece of this guy. So he is undeniably motivated. And then Bill asked him, do you think he knows who number 29 is now? And he says, I don't give a damn what he knows. So what's great about this, and the reason for this long story to start our little program here, is that generally speaking, I still believe that NFL rivalries are bunk. like Sherman and Holmgren and McCarthy, they used to show the guys videos of like old school pack. LaFleur doesn't do that. All those pictures of old school Packers that used to be in meeting rooms and stuff, those are gone. They believe that today's player wants to see a picture of himself on the wall of the meeting room. Now, I will not get into how I feel about that. I personally don't agree with it, but that's what today's player's looking for, right? They don't care about history. They care about what.
Oh, hold on. Did you just say you're not going to get into that and then give your opinion on it?
No, I just stated a fact. That's what today's player doesn't care about that stuff.
And then you said, I don't like it.
Well, that was fine. That's not fair. I'm not going to get deep into that. How's that? Better?
That's better. Yeah.
But my point is that, like, I was talking to Dontavion Wicks yesterday. Dontavion Wicks doesn't care about the rivalry. He doesn't. He cares about catching the football more effectively.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Right?
Yeah.
And we had a good conversation about that. But yeah, I mean, he's from Louisiana. He played at Virginia. He doesn't care. So my point is that this injected a level of player-related rivalry that makes it different. That's a long way of saying that.
That's super interesting because I saw that quote this morning right before we jumped on, and I hadn't seen it on Wednesday, and I was surprised by it. But I guess that the background makes a little bit more sense. So let's go back to something you just said, because I'm surprised to hear you say it, and you just elaborated a little bit on it. But rivalries being bunked to players, you don't think there's a few players in that locker room that understand the gravity of it, right? Like Jordan Love's been around long enough where I feel like he probably gets it and gets up a little bit extra for a game like this.
What's the gravity of it?
It's the oldest rivalry in the NFL. The Packers have, and pretty much in Love's career, have been in complete domination mode versus the Chicago Bears, right? He assumes ownership from Aaron Rodgers. We saw how Aaron Rodgers got up for this rivalry.
But Aaron Rodgers is different, right? He's old school. The new school is not like that. I'm telling you. I don't want to burst your bubble because I know you love.
You're doing just that. I do.
But
yeah.
This isn't. It just isn't, and that's okay. Like, again, I am not the arbiter of what 24, 25-year-old guys should feel about a matchup. But like, rivalries to them are either individual, right? Jair Alexander and Justin Jefferson.
Just about to bring that one up. Yeah.
They're not team. There's a moment, a controversy, a fight, a dirty play, whatever it is that creates the rivalry, right? And I think I'll use a little bit of an old school example. You know, I don't think there was a real Packers-Buccaneers rivalry back in the early 2000s when you were just a baby. But when Warren Sapp cheap-shotted Chad Clifton, you can bet your ass that there was a rivalry then. And when that team went back to Tampa, they were out for revenge, right? It was a reckoning, as they say in Tombstone. That's a rivalry. But there was a defining moment, and the head coach went after a future Hall of Fame player, and the future Hall of Fame player said, "Put a jersey on! Put a jersey on!" That was the rivalry. Packers, Vikings.
Warren Sapp was pretty damn good.
Thank you. Packers, Vikings in the 2000s certainly became more of a rivalry because they were jockeying for position atop the division. It was definitely a rivalry in 2009 when Brett Favre was their quarterback. But like the Bears, it's great that there's history. And again, I get vilified for I want Caleb Williams to be good. So this can be a real rivalry of two dueling great young quarterbacks facing off twice a year with the division and playoff positioning on the line. That's what I want because I'm not a fan. And I get crushed for that. And I'm fine with that. I am, because that's what I want. Doesn't have to be what you want. But especially when one coach is 10-0 against an organization, that's not a rivalry. That's a bloodbath. So speaking of bloodbaths, while Cliff Crystal and Gary D'Amato wrote a great book called Mudbaths and Bloodbaths, which is a history of the Packers-Bears rivalry, I can guarantee you that there is not a player on that roster and probably not a player on that coach on that coaching staff who's ever read that book. They just don't care. And it's great that it's a rivalry for fans, and it should be. But I definitely have heard players say that. That's for the fans. It's just not the same. It just doesn't work that way.
Really fascinating, I guess. So appreciate the insight on that. And yeah, I am a little disappointed to hear that, but hey, man, it's just the world we live in. I'm curious though, and then we'll get more on Jordan Love and everybody practicing in the second half of the season. But last thing on this, do you think the players are more excited, I guess, will be more excited about the team they're playing next week when they play San Francisco, who ended their season a year ago?
Yeah, for
because
sure,
that's more
right?
personal, right?
Right, and that's like, again, there's not the roster turnover since, say, the 21 playoff game that they lost at home has been, somewhat significant, right? I mean, none of those draft classes of 22, 23, and 24 were on that team either, but guys that were there, Elton Jenkins, great example. Like, Elton Jenkins has had the 49ers end his rookie season and his third season and his fifth NFL season. Now, that's what creates a rivalry. Now, do I think that there's a rivalry from the 49ers side? I mean, maybe a little, but they're like, hey, we own these guys, right? And, that's another example. Like, there was an extenuating circumstance. Like, Matt LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan were tight. And then Kyle Shanahan tried to poach his quarterback. So tight. Remember the blow-by handshake?
Yeah.
Like, you didn't even look at him. And I think they're in a slightly better place now. But I think Matt's a little bit like me. He may forgive eventually, but he ain't forgetting. So I'm sure there's something to that matchup too. But the bottom line is that if something happens in this game, look, I'll give Rodgers this, like, from a Bears perspective, I own you, I still own you, pissed off those Bears players.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Now, it didn't change the outcomes.
No, it did not.
So I don't know how much it worked, but the bottom line is that it's just, this is a great thing for fans, and you should lean into it as a fan. Nothing wrong with that. But don't expect these guys to give a what, because most of them do not, no matter what they say publicly.
Well, similarly to Aaron Rodgers, I own the Bears, Jason, so I'm going to lean into it. I've seen the Packers lose to the Bears, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times, it feels like, in the last 2 decades. So, yeah, I'll keep it alive and well. I will keep the rivalry alive and well. Let's talk second half of the season. Obviously, the Packers coming off of their bye week. The old saying in the NFL, and it seems like every team says this and every fan base says this, oh, the bye came at time, Jason. But it really did for the Packers. All 52 players on their roster are practicing in some capacity yesterday. That's seemingly a good note for the Packers, and Jordan Love practicing in full for the first time in a few weeks. So it seems like this team is relatively healthy entering the second half of the season.
Yeah, did you see this thing with Rodgers where some random person on Twitter posted that Jared Goff had thrown 4 or more interceptions in a game 6 times, and that he was 6-0 in those games? And then that person came out, and Rodgers referenced the stat
I did see this
on McAfee. And then the guy came out and said, I made that up while I was laying in bed watching the game. And the fact of the matter is it's only happened twice with Goff. And
he's 1-1 in those games, by the way.
Yeah. And so the point that this person made that made up the stat is, this is how disinformation spreads on social media. Not everyone practiced yesterday.
So Ron Domofsky lied to us?
So again, that's based on, and look, I didn't go to practice. Our access was during Wilde and Tausch, so I didn't go. And I'm not throwing around us, but we get an injury report for a reason. And Colby Wooden, number 96 in your program, number 6 or 7 on your defensive line depth chart, didn't practice because he's got a shoulder injury.
Got it.
So, but again, you tweet that out, and a lot of people follow social media. A lot of people don't necessarily read the newspaper or read.
Okay. So time out. So two things before we get to your actual answer on the status. This team is very healthy, but did you just compare me to Aaron Rodgers?
I'm just telling you that in a world where there are real world consequences, I'm going to preach now,
Oh, here we
to
go.
not being informed, and some really bad stuff can happen. It always pays to try and go the extra mile to be informed. And I'm not criticizing you personally. That is an overarching statement that we get too much of our information from social media, and it's not
Exactly.
always accurate. And Rob was not trying to mislead you. He's not a Russian operative, but he thought, right? Isn't that what they do on social media? Aren't there Russian bots and stuff?
Yeah, I
I've
guess
lost a lot of Twitter followers. There's a lot of there's like people are just leaving that platform in droves, apparently.
Yeah, they sure are.
But my point is that when he went to practice, he must have thought he saw. I mean, maybe Colby Wooden was there in his jersey, but the bottom line is he did not practice. Matt LaFleur told us that after practice. It's on the injury report. That's the facts. But to your point, which we've now wasted time with me preaching, is that they're in really good health, right?
Yeah.
Jair Alexander is still dealing with his knee. He was limited, but your hope would be that he'd be able to play. Evan Williams, who had the hamstring injury in Jacksonville, didn't play against the Lions. He practiced on a limited basis. He's hoping that he can play. Obviously, Jordan Love, who I may or may not have called a liar yesterday, was able to practice in full. He's still on the injury report, but he's listed as a full participant. So, yes, they are much healthier, and your hope would be that it could stay that way, or at least something close to that way the rest of the way.
Okay, you're a three-time Wisconsin Sportswriter of the Year, but that was a master class in burying the lead. Why did you call Jordan Love a liar?
Well, I didn't call him so I kind of called him a liar, and it was actually I'm really enjoying getting to know Jordan and building a. So we're at his locker, and at least my storyline that I have in my head going in for my State Journal story is Jordan Love is going to be healthier. And how's that going to affect how he plays, right? Pretty obvious. Like you don't have to be a sports writer of the year to recognize that. And so others have that same thought. Domofsky does, others do. So we asked a series of injury-related, health-related, impacting your performance-related questions about the injuries. And at one point, Jordan says, hey, look, I've been practicing for a while. I've been moving around. It's fine. And I'm sitting there going, no, you haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and again, speaking of master classes, I don't think, I don't want to call you a liar, Jordan, but is generally not the opener that you want to have of an interview or a question that you're asking. But sure. I thought I had enough time to think about it because I'm really bad at jumping in when there's a moment. There's other reporters that are really good at it. It's just I'm more of a take a beat guy. But there was a moment of quiet, and so I had been thinking about this questions because he was wrong. Because I said, the week leading into the Detroit game, you didn't practice on Wednesday. You only did individual drills on Thursday. And then on Friday, you practiced on a limited basis, and that's the lightest practice of the week. So you haven't really been practicing. And so, I know you believe in the value of practice. So how much is it going to help you going forward? You're a full participant today. How much is it going to help you going forward to be able to practice? It's one thing to deal with the injury itself and not be able to step into the throw like you want to, but also just not being able to practice. Like, look at what's gone on with him and Wicks. Like, Wicks has taken the brunt of these drops, but if you look at them, some of them are either thrown behind him or thrown low. Definitely. Like, they're not accurate throws either, to be fair to Dontavion Wicks. And so, Love gives a good answer. And then afterward, the group disperses. And he kind of gives me the head nod. He's like, hey, I'm sorry. I totally forgot that I didn't practice before the Lions game. I said, well, I hope I wasn't really calling you a liar. I thought maybe you were just confused. So what I'm saying is that even though he said that, I think that tells you a lot about how valuable this is, because I I don't think we've seen an accurate representation of who Jordan Love is, because the guy has been hurt in some form or fashion since the final minute in Brazil. And yes, injuries impact how you play and your mechanics and how you move in the pocket. Those are all true. But the other thing that they do is they prevent you from practicing the way you need to. And I always say this, I don't care if you're an 8th grade girls basketball player, like the one that lives in my house, or a gymnast who hasn't practiced in 2 months because she had knee surgery, or Jordan Love, you got to practice. We practice for a reason. It makes you better no matter what level you're at. And I love practice. Now, maybe that's because I never got off the bench on game days, but practice matters. And Jordan Love knows it matters. And I think there's a much better chance that you will see him make better decisions and be more accurate with the football when he's taking every first team rep, which is the plan for him this week and every week going forward. He's healthy.
Yeah, we're skipping 4 downs today because I just have a ton more questions on this. And Love specifically in the Packers in the second half of the season here with 8 games left. But before we get there, I do want to look at the opponent because it has been a total spiral for the Chicago Bears, who have lost 3 in a row. They lose 19-3 last week to the New England Patriots, who many view as one of the worst teams in the NFL. So Bears lose that game. They go on to have the most awkward Matt Eberflus interview ever on ESPN 1000. If you haven't seen that footage already, you can find it all over the internet with our friends Cap and Jay Hood, the mornings on our sister station, ESPN 1000. Tuesday, Matt Eberflus announces they have fired Shane Waldron, their offensive coordinator, just 10 weeks into the season. That is the second offensive coordinator this calendar year that have been fired by the Bears. Remember, Luke Getsy was fired at the end of last season by the Bears, and then later once again for Luke Getsy. But all in all, 2 offensive coordinators get fired. The Bears have lost 3 in a row. They look completely inept against the New England Patriots last week. That triggered me to say something along the lines of, I believe there is a 0% chance the Packers will lose this game on Monday's Mr. Irrelevant, which made the rounds a little bit. People thinking I'm hexing and whatever else. But I really don't feel nervous about this game because the Bears are in complete dysfunction mode. I'm curious from your perspective, Jason, how you analyze and view what the Bears are going through, because this is not the first time we've seen this from them in the last decade or so.
Yeah, while you were jinxing them, I was taking a lot of heat for basically taking pity on Bears fans, right? On our show, obviously, I said that, and I do feel bad because it's not their fault, right? They're not the ones that keep screwing up. It's that organization that keeps screwing up. And, again, we're all products of our environments on a number of levels, including our fandom, right? Like I grew up, my grandparents got Packers tickets in the 1940s at State Fair Park. So I was born and bred a green and gold Packers fan. I sat behind home plate at County Stadium and watched bad Packers teams lose from behind home plate. So that's my history. I chose to be a San Diego Chargers fan, right? They were always the afternoon game.
Dan Fouts was a good quarterback, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. Charlie Joyner, Kellen Winslow, Chuck Muncie, Rolf Butter. So my point is that, you're largely born into being a Bears fan. And it sucks because they suck. And they continue to screw things up at an alarming rate. So, but I took some heat for that, right? Just like I'm sure you deservedly take some heat, because as I've given you this cautionary tale before of me riding the media bus, Super Bowl 32, and saying, I don't see any way the Packers lose this game.
You said it about the Jacksonville Jaguars again this year, and they won that game by 3 points. But anyway,
I did that to see if it still had some, and frankly, they almost lost that too. So, I don't recommend it.
The good news is not you.
The good news is for me that you're not me. Although I like to think of you as a protege. Look, there's a path to defeat for the Packers, right? Jordan Love turns the ball over. The defense somehow manages to let DJ Moore come off the bench and get wide open down the field after he gets done getting his Gatorade, whatever. The Bears playing at home, filled with pride to say we got to get our blank together. It's possible, but not likely at all. They're a bad football team that I don't like. Did you hear this? I heard this from Jen, Gabe, and Chewy that yesterday. I haven't gone through the transcript of Caleb Williams, but somebody asked Caleb Williams yesterday about his relationship with Thomas Brown, the new offensive play caller, and he said he's barely talked to him.
Yeah, I did see that.
What?
Yeah, right.
He's the passing game coordinator. He should be in some of these meetings that you're talking about the passing game.
Yeah.
I don't get it. So that tells you that's dysfunction, right? Because I'll tell you this, in Green Bay, Jason Vrabel is the passing game coordinator, longtime wide receivers coach, still is in all the wide receiver meetings. But if I go to Jordan Love today and go, hey, how often do you talk to Vrabel? He's going to say, I talk to him every day. He's in the meeting. We do a meeting where it's the wide receivers, tight ends, and me, and we're talking about stuff like, what the hell are you doing down there? And again, you want to know why I feel bad for Bears fans? They don't have any control over that. Is preposterous.
Yeah. So
again, is there a strong likelihood that the Packers lose on Sunday? And I said this to Homer and John Anderson earlier in the week, but this is a sneaky. It's not a must win, but it's kind of a sneaky, weird must win in that.
Definitely.
You're 0-2 in the division. You're playing a craptastic team that's in complete disarray. You can't lose to these guys.
No.
You got to take care of business. If you are the team you think you are, you go down there and you kick their tukuses.
Kick the tukus. No doubt. And you point that out, but this is the first time, and this is a stat I've loved the last few weeks. Not loved because of the stat, but it's a fascinating stat to me. It's the first time the Packers have started 0-2 in NFC North play since 2005. I mean, it's been 19 years since they started like that.
That was a good year, too.
No, it wasn't. No, it was not. But yeah, that's just fascinating to me that they haven't started 0-2 in division play since then. I don't even want to know last time they started 0-3, but the good news is I don't think we're going to have to deal with that. All right, couple minutes left, Jason. I'm just curious on your takeaway from last year to this year, right? You talked about Jordan Love and how we haven't really seen the fully healthy version of him that we got to see, especially in the second half of last year. The Packers were phenomenal last year. Jordan Love was the best quarterback in the NFL. Here we go, week 11. It's Packers-Bears with 8 games remaining for Green Bay. How do you anticipate that this team plays down the stretch, performs down the stretch? Because last year was great, but it feels to some degree that fans, including myself, kind of just automatically expect they will do what they did a year ago, and that's not a given.
Certainly not, and there's a lot of unknowns and wild cards that fit into this equation, right? Like, look, there were some games last year that they won down the stretch where they were, I mean, let's be honest, they had a couple of things bounce their way, right? So, like, if we're, and let's not lose sight of the fact that within that 6-2 finish last year, they had 2 3-game winning streaks sandwiched around a really bad loss to the Giants on the road, and then an even worse loss at home to Tampa Bay, where Baker Mayfield had a perfect passer rating.
Passer rating, yeah.
So, you look at the first win streak was the Chargers, the Lions on Thanksgiving, and the Chiefs. Away from the Chiefs win. They went and won the Super Bowl. They were not playing like they were at the end of the year, but that's still a quality win. The Thanksgiving win was magnificent. They went in there and they said, we're going to take it to these guys. They took it to us. They throw the deep ball to Christian Watson to start the game. And you're like, whoo. But the Chargers game, they should have lost that game. The Chargers dropped all these passes like they were playing in AT&T Stadium and the sun was in their eyes.
Good pop.
And then in their other winning streak, they play the Panthers, who they almost gave the game away to.
And interim offensive coordinator Thomas Brown, by the way. Yeah.
Indeed. They play the Vikings, who lost that game as soon as Kevin O'Connell made the quarterback switch that week, and then they beat the Bears. So what I'm saying is that, you know, it was a great finish, no doubt about it. And Jordan Love played magnificent football. And your hope would be for him to approximate that into the second half. But some things went their way. Now look at what they've got left in the last 8 games of this year's schedule. This Bears game should be a gimme. I get it. I'm not criticizing you for your 0% chance. Niners, I don't care where you're playing them. They seem to be getting their acts together. That is not going to be easy.
It's going to be a tough game no matter where you play it. Obviously, it's at Lambeau, which helps, but that's a tough
Right.
game.
Do I think the Dolphins are going to come up here on Thanksgiving night, and if it's chilly and rainy, they're going to come in and win? No, I don't think that's going to happen. No. Okay? But then here's your last 4 or last 5. At Detroit. Great that you did what you did on Thanksgiving. Hard to replicate. Good football team, right? Really good.
Really good.
At Seattle. Seattle's obviously having issues after a good start, but it's still on the road across the country and not an easy place to play either, even if they're not a top flight team. Your last 3, New Orleans, which is a train wreck. You're playing them on Monday Night Football at home. You should win that. Now, Minnesota on the road. That's a nut. Again, they went in there last year and beat them, but let's not pretend that that's the same as beating them this year in Minnesota. That will not be an easy game either.
Hard to replicate once again, yeah.
Right. And then you've got the Bears to finish off the regular season at home. So, look, do I think they should go 6-2 against that schedule? Yeah, I do. Right? And that puts them at 12-5. Second place in the division still, and still going on the road in the playoffs. But if they're anything less than 6-2, then they probably ran into some challenges that we didn't expect. And I said this at the start of the year when you and I and Gabe were at Summerfest. They could be a better team this year than they were last year and end up not going as far in the playoffs. I expected them to have a better record than 9-8. I believe they will. This team is not going 3-5 in the last 8 games, but they'll have a better record, but they may not get farther in the playoffs because growth is not linear.
Now, there it is again from Jason Wilde, the 3-time Wisconsin Sportswriter of the Year. You going to Chicago?
So I was going to.
Okay.
But
plans changed clearly.
I did. Yeah, there's, again, the girls are going to be in high school soon. They'll have less and less and less to do with me. We got something on Sunday that if I stay home and I do Green Bay game day with you from here and then watch the game and write, I'll be able to do a couple of other things that the girls have going on. So I believe I'm going to Minnesota will be the only road trip, but I know our teammates at ESPN Chicago will have things covered very well at Soldier Field for me.
Yeah, hopefully a 30-point win for the Packers. At Jason J. Wilde on social media. I'm at Alex_Strouf. Jason, appreciate the time as always. We'll do it again tomorrow on Jen, Gabe, and Chewy. We'll do it again Sunday on Green Bay game day leading up to kickoff.
What do you mean we'll do it tomorrow on Jen, Gabe, and Chewy? You filling in?
It'll be a Dude Friday. Gabe Knights and myself and Josh DiMaggio with you.
Wow. All right. I look forward to that. And I just wanted to say, I don't know how many people are still watching, but this has been one of the coolest things that we have added to our repertoire. And, I have not influenced your career. You'd be a rising star without me. But I love doing this. And I appreciate everybody. I know the numbers keep ticking up on the number of people watching this and listening on ESPN Beaver Dam. So thanks to everybody who's supporting this because it's fun to do every week.
Well said. We'll talk to you next Thursday. It's Weekly Wilde right here on ESPN Milwaukee and ESPN Beaver Dam.